So we're talking about a series that's gone 4 games so far, 3 to overtime, which has been fantastic. Have you been overly kind of disappointed in this rivalry series? Just just the fact that, Dean Brown says it all the time, right? Hate's good for hockey. There really isn't a lot of hate in this series. Could it get there?
I think there's some dislike, obviously,
Some strong
but,
dislike.
but there's not that over the top what we used to see years ago in this rivalry, and what we're seeing right now with Tampa and Florida. Like, they hate each other. Like, it is obvious when you watch those games. Like, it's a different level of venom in that series than what we're seeing in this series.
Ridley Gregg did his best in the first 2 games to kind of get under the skin of the Maple Leafs, and I think probably did more so maybe, again, to the fans than to the actual Maple Leafs. I think part of the effect as well as Brady Tkachuk is not healthy. I think we can all agree on that, and I don't know how close to 100% he is, but it doesn't seem like he's very close at all. There was a moment, you guys remember the end of the first period in the game on Saturday night. So Dylan Cousins ends up getting in a face-washing contest with, I don't remember who it was from the Maple Leafs, but it's a big scrum. And Brady Tkachuk it starts with Brady Tkachuk getting engaged with somebody in the corner. And there's a bunch of face-washing going on. Who's the first guy that skates out of the pile is Brady Tkachuk. That doesn't normally happen ever. And that was another indication to me that he just cannot physically engage at this point. And so that, if Brady Tkachuk if it was 100% Brady Tkachuk, I have no doubt that this series, the temperature of this series would be at another level. But he has not been able to. He's had his moments. I think he's played well. He's not been Four Nations Brady Tkachuk that everybody had hoped. But I think whatever he's dealing with is limiting his effectiveness. But I also think that that's why we haven't seen classic Brady Tkachuk in this series. I don't know how you guys feel about that.
Maybe, but I think that's, well, we know he's not 100%, so very plausible that way. But I would also add, in that circumstance in particular, maybe he's also cognizant, I don't want to be the guy that's singled out of these piles like this as well.
Yeah, but
right?
I don't know if you remember that
Yeah.
specific one. He disengaged right away and wasn't even kind of like, you know what you can get away with. If the one guy's
Yep.
face washing you, you can face wash them. It's all good. It's all fine. You know the limit you can get to. He didn't even, and this is not a criticism whatsoever. This is just an indication to me that he is dealing with something very significant.
He doesn't want to get into some sort of tussle wrestling match because it's obviously whatever's ailing him seems to be lower body, hip area, somewhere around there.
It's the soft tissue area around there.
Yeah, and he doesn't really want to
There's a strain factor probably.
to make that worse, exactly, by getting into some sort of hair pulling match in the corner.
Yeah. So, and again, so to your point of where's all the hate in this series, I think that's a very big factor in it. Is that Brady Tkachuk is usually the number one pot stirrer, and he would have brought some Maple Leafs, as everybody likes to say, into the fight, and that hasn't happened in this series. Ridley Gregg has been by far, and even that's been mostly the first 2 games. I didn't find that was nearly the case in the last 2 games with Gregg, where he was as feisty or in the middle of things, but he's as close to being a kind of pesty playoff performer from both teams so far in this series. So even Nick Cousins has been very quiet, other than in warm-ups.
So that brings up another question. Man, I'm full of great questions here this morning.
We'll be the judge of that.
Does that play into the Leafs' hand then? The fact that the Sens can't go to one of their strengths, which is, physicality. I mean, it's not like they're not physical. I think the last time I heard, they're leading the playoffs in hits. But the fact that they can't really toe that line at that moment, and one of their best players who does a fantastic job of doing that is kind of skating out of those situations. Is that pro Leafs on that one?
Well, I said at the start of the series, if you want to compare eras and styles of teams here, it's like this edition of the air quotes Battle of Ontario. It's like this time the Ottawa Senators have Darcy Tucker and Gary Roberts on their team, and Ridley Gregg and Brady Tkachuk. And Ridley Gregg's, not even practicing. And Brady's not 100%. So you're not getting that kind of, that that factor in the way that when they're at their very best and the way that they play. And you think back to those series, like that's kind of what Darcy Tucker and Gary Roberts brought to the Leafs.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't think it's by any stretch of the imagination. I'd be interested for American hockey fans, let's say, people who didn't have a vested interest in this series, what they have thought about it so far. I mean, 3 overtime games speaks for itself. I don't think that you get 3 overtime games out of 4, and people are going to say, that's a boring series. But I can't speak to it because we're right in the middle of it. And obviously people are insanely interested when you're fans of either the team that's in the middle of it.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's boring, right? We've seen some late game time goals that have led to overtime. I'm just saying it's not exactly the series I thought it was going to be. I thought it would be just a little bit more. The knob of nasty turned up just a little bit more.
Now they're not happy about it. The Zub Tavares hit, obviously, but you got to flush that and move on. You got a game to play, right? I get that, but why do you guys think that? Because even if you're the most ardent Sens fan, you look at that, you would think, okay, I would think at the very least it would cross the desk of Dops afterwards just to have a look. A guy's pulled from a game, concussion spotter, because he was hit in the head, right? Why do you think that they didn't act on it at all? Like, I've got my theory. What do you guys think? Like, what did they see?
Well, they
act on it with a fine or a suspension, at least a fine.
Well, we don't know that they didn't look at it.
Well, no, they look at everything. Of course, they looked at it. They did, but why did it not rise to level of anything?
I think it was just purely accidental, the contact, to be honest. I think Zub was just taking his ice. Tavares moved into it, and elbows up.
Okay,
Mark. The election's over.
Okay, Mark Carney.
and you ate one accidentally. Like, it wasn't something that Zub kind of shoved out there and put it into his head. It was just
okay. But you have a vested interest in this. Again, as I always say, flip it around.
Yep.
Go the other way. How are you feeling about it?
Yeah, fine. To be honest, to be absolutely honest, fine.
Playoff
just like
hockey.
The Starlars, the hack. I was fine with that because that was just the officials just allowed him to get his little chunk of flesh there. Mm-hmm. There you go. We're done. We're square. And we really haven't seen any battles right now between Stolars and any other Senator player, especially really Greg.
And you can play this game all day long, right? Like I mentioned it in real time during the game. I went back and I found it as like that. What Kelly Yarncroc did to David Perron early in the game, like, holy, was that dangerous? Scrambled in the crease, and he comes in at the end and cross-checks Perron from behind. Perron goes down, bangs his head off the post on the way down. And if people forget when that happened, that's when Perron took the penalty, and the Leafs got a power play out of it, and you're like, why is he so livid? Because he gets up and he goes to the corner and he's throwing, basically, with gloves on. That's why.
Right.
And that's a nothing burger. Like there's all kinds of stuff like that happens during games. But to your point, like, I think Zub, when you watch it, I think it's Nylander that has the puck, right? And he's circling. And Tavares is just trying to get to the slot. And what's the job of the defenseman? That's my ice.
Box out.
I am boxing out. You are not getting inside position. So Zub's doing his job. Now, was he overzealous? Sure. Yes. Did he mean to do that? No, but he did. But I think that's probably what Dops looked at. It's like that's really unfortunate, but that's a box out play. That's what was happening there. That wasn't a target and I'm getting you.
To your question of why didn't it rise to the level of at least a fine, if not a suspension? I think I think the discussion happens between the NHL and its officials. In this case, the officials, the referees from that game. How did you miss that? Why didn't you call that? Because it should have been a penalty. I do believe It should have been a penalty.
Yep.
It was a missed call. Now Toronto did get a 4-minute power play right after that. They had, more than a sufficient opportunity to win that game on that power play. But if we're just talking about that specific incident itself, it was a penalty. It's interference, and it should have been called, and it wasn't. So my greater issue is I just wonder if there was a discussion again from the director of officiating. Is it still Stephen Walcom? Is he still the director of officiating?
Might be still Stephen Walcom, yeah.
Former referee.
Yeah.
Anyway, with that and the 2 game officials, that's what I'm guessing went on. So, anyway, we'll see what happens tonight. I don't know that the temperature is necessarily rising. I think it's kind of been at, it's been at kind of an 7 or 7.5 out of 10 throughout. And really the story of the series is how, other than game one, how close it's been.